Hello and welcome to another episode of LGOtv Big Talk. And why Big Talk? Because I hate small talk. Who needs small talk? Our lives are way too busy and there's way too many important things happening in the world to just talk about nonsense like the weather or what you did on your summer vacation. Because let's face it, none of us had summer vacations this year. My guest today is one of the biggest talkers I know. She talks about the stuff that really matters when you're faced with who you are and what you want to be and what you want your life to look like, when everything that you knew is being threatened to be taken away from you. What will your life become? Amberly Lago is a health and wellness coach. She's a TEDx speaker. She's a podcaster. I had the great privilege of being on her show, and we had one of the most amazing conversations. She's a leading expert in the field of resilience and transformation. She's a best-selling author of a book called True Grit and Grace. And when you hear her today, you will understand what it's like to face your fears, to face difficulty with true grit and grace. She empowers people around the world by sharing her story of how she turned tragedy into triumph. She's got a book, she coaches, she's got workshops, she's got a great course. They all have unique tools that teach you how to tap into your superpower of resilience and persevere through anything life is going to throw at you. She offers hope and solutions for anyone just like her who's living in chronic pain to live life to the fullest. Amberly has most recently been featured on NBC's The Today Show. She was on The Doctors, Hallmark, Good Morning, La La Land, and has contributed to magazines like Shape, Fit Pregnancy, Health, and Disability magazine. Amberly, thank you for waking up super early in California to join us today.
Oh, thank you. I always love talking to you. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, I am thrilled to have you. And if COVID has done anything for any of us, it's improved your backdrop, because when I did the podcast with you last time, I think you were sitting in your closet to make sure that you had great sound.
Oh, yes. Well, that day, I'd moved from my main office, shut that because it shut down. They weren't letting people in, and moved it to my home office. And that day the gardeners came and I'm like, oh my goodness, what? So yeah, we felt it, but the sound was really good. But we were in my closet and my background was a bunch of coats.
It was fantastic. They were fantastic coats. I want to talk about the motorcycle accident that happened when you were 38 years old. But before we go to that, I want to talk to you about who you were when you were 37. What did life look like before your accident?
It was really, I could almost cry just thinking about it because it was the happiest time of my life. I was at that place where I had worked so hard to build my career. And so I had a successful fitness career earning, six figures. I had, employed several people. And I was in I still am in a beautiful marriage, but I finally was like, oh, I had been divorced twice before. This was both of our third marriages. I was like, oh, life is finally good. We were trying to have a baby. We didn't think we could. We had kind of given up. And then miraculously, we had a baby. So we had our family. I had an older daughter who was, doing amazing in school. We were newlyweds. We had a new baby. My career was booming. And I really felt like I've made it. Life is good. Like I've finally things are a little easier. And then everything changed like
And
overnight.
so you were heading home from work, I think it was. You were on your motorcycle, you're crossing the
Mhm.
intersection, and an SUV comes out of nowhere and everything changes.
Yeah, I was on my motorcycle. That day I had finished training clients. I had ran 11 miles, and I know you relate to working out and running because you're an athlete too. And so that day I had ran my best time for 11 miles, and I was on my motorcycle, and yeah, I see a guy coming out of a parking lot, and I think he was trying to miss me, like trying to get out before me. So he shot out of a parking lot. And I thought I had enough time to go, oh shit, this is really happening. To try to jump off my bike. I let go of the clutch and it was too late. I immediately felt pain. I was thrown about 30 feet. And then I was sliding across the asphalt, which it felt like it was in slow motion. And all I could think is, please don't let another car hit me. When I finally stopped, I looked down at my leg, and I only looked once because it was so terrifying and baffling. Like, it's crazy to look down at your body and have it completely disfigured. So it was crumbled into pieces. And it was like one of those horror movies where, you see in the horror movies where something, is severed and there's blood gushing with every heartbeat. There was blood gushing out. And I didn't know, thank goodness I didn't know at the time, that it was because my femoral artery was severed. And so my foot was dangling off, and I did not want to let go of my leg because I felt like if I let go of my leg, that it would fall off. And so I started screaming, call 911. Like, cars were just driving by, but then people started to stop. And I knew, like, one of the first thoughts in my mind was, and I realized looking back at this, like, one of my defaults has always been to, okay, well, what can I do? What am I going to do? And one of my first thoughts as I'm lying in the street was, oh, this can't be good. I may have to train clients on crutches for a while. And little did I know that I was dying. That I may not survive this, that my life would be changed forever. And paramedics got there pretty quick. But when I knew it was really serious, is people were not running up to me to help me. One lady fainted when she looked at me. Luckily, there was a nurse that happened to drive by and see me, and she walked over and grabbed my hands and said, you have to breathe with me. And so she got me, it felt like when I took Lamaze class, the breathing. And so I would breathe a little bit and I would scream out cuss words. And then I'd think, oh, my Methodist mother wouldn't be too happy with those cuss words. And it was just chaotic. And, when I was rushed to the hospital in the ambulance, I remember squeezing the paramedic's leg. And I was looking at him to give me some sort of sign, like eye contact, like, you're going to be okay. We got this, you're fine. And he wouldn't look at me.
It's like when the jury comes back and they won't look at the defendant. And you're like, yep, they definitely think you're guilty, right?
Yeah. It was like, I thought, oh my gosh, maybe I am going to die. And then I was wishing I would die because the pain was so bad. And when I got to the ER, it was chaotic because my husband's a cop, and he called some of his other, CHP arrived very soon. And so the whole ER was filled with cops everywhere. And then I heard, this crying and but wailing really. And I was like, what? It was crazy. And I realized it was my husband. And I had never seen him cry before. And he wasn't just crying, he was hysterical, and he was running back and forth across the ER. And we've talked about that later. And he said, well, they were reaching in and breaching in to get your femoral artery with some clippers and trying to pull them out, and it would snap back into your leg. They were just trying to stop the bleeding. And he said, you would be freaking out too. And I yelled across the ER. I said, honey, I need you to get over here and be strong for me. And I needed to know that he was going to be okay, because at that moment I thought, I may not live through this. And he grabbed my hand. And that's the last thing I remember before they put me in induced coma. And I didn't know how long I was out. When I woke up, I had all these tubes down my throat. You can't talk. And so I immediately try to rip out the tubes, and my arms are flailing. And they're like, oh, I think she's trying to talk. I think she's trying to talk. And they bring over a notepad and a pencil. They're like, don't rip out the tubes, honey. Don't rip them out. And I write down, the first thing I write on the paper is, my husband's leaning over me. He's got tears in his eyes that I'm awake. And I write, get off my tubes, because he was leaning over me. He was cutting off the air supply. I couldn't breathe. And he's like, oh, and then the next thing I wrote was, please don't tell Savannah. That was my oldest daughter. And when I was put in a coma, she was on an 8th grade school trip to look at colleges. for her school. And little did I know I'd been out for over a week. Everybody knew, she knew, everybody knew. And then that's when they said, we're going to have to amputate your leg.
So
And
before we get to that, because I want to talk about that, there's such a poignant story in there. I'm fascinated by the fact that in all of this, you were like, I'm going to have to train my clients on crutches. My husband is having a hard time. Don't tell my daughter. All you were thinking about is still taking care of everyone else the entire time.
wow, I didn't even think about that. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm dying, but just don't worry anybody with this. Let's keep it on the down low. I'll be okay. That's interesting that you brought that up. I've never thought about that.
Yeah, I'm not going to make any trouble here. I'm just going to die quietly.
Yeah, don't mind me.
People. So it's so interesting to me that through this, that's where your head was. And by the way, you're gonna think this is crazy, but you're actually the second guest I've had on my show who's had their femoral artery demolished. I had a guest earlier, Josh Mance, who you'll recognize because I know you've read my book, is the beginning story in the book where he's the vet who was shot and killed in combat in Iraq and then brought back to life. And he talks about those moments of, he walked us in the podcast through the seconds and the minutes, the moments leading up to and through his death, and how everything went to slow motion, how your sort of parasympathetic nervous system, sort of starts breaking things down. And he saw blood everywhere, but he thought it was other people's. And he went through the same thing you went through, which is like really thinking through other people in these moments and who's there and what matters, and that deep connection to humans and humanity, and the way that you had it with the nurse and with the EMT. So it's this is my sample set of 2 that I have now, but it's a really interesting trend that I'm seeing in this. So you're there, you wake up, and I know they walk in and they tell you that you've got like a 1% chance of saving your leg.
Yeah, well, my husband, when I was in a coma, they had said we're going to amputate her leg, and he said, no, I want her to wake up, and I want with both of her legs, and I want that to be her decision. You are not touching, you're not going to amputate. So he still is like, you've got both your legs because of me, because they were just going to cut it off.
Because you've always had an identity. You were an athlete when you were growing up, right? You've always had this identity as like able, not just able-bodied, but like, able to scrap through and to fight for what you want.
Yeah. And what was so interesting, my whole life. I mean, I started teaching dance when I was 13 years old. I ran track. I was training for the Olympics, and I chose dance over the Olympics, and, had a dance career where I traveled the world. And then I did, fitness, infomercials for Body by Jake. I don't know if you remember Body by Jake, but like, sponsored by Nike. I was nationally recognized as a fitness coach. And so, but also, running was really my medicine. That was my drug of choice. And, I was known for my legs. I had these strong athletic legs, and people would always comment, I could be at a fitness competition, or not competition, conference, and I'd have people walk by and say, "Oh, you worked hard for those." So it was really my sense of identity and my sense of worth. And I just couldn't imagine not having. And I've had people say, well, why'd you keep your leg? And I was like, I couldn't imagine not keeping my leg. And so when they told me I had a 1% chance, I was like, oh, thank goodness there's a chance. There's hope. And I'm
not what they meant when they said 1% chance.
It's all how you look at it, right? I was like, okay.
Had they walked in and said you have a 99% chance of this not working out, would you have been like, oh, I mean, was it the phrasing?
You know what? I think I had to fight so hard for everything that I've had, I had hardly any chance. I had so many naysayers and so many, people that were like, oh, you'll never make it as a dancer. You won't, I had a thriving business as a dancer. I was on teams where we ran, marathons, and we had, 5 mile legs each for the marathons. And I would be on with all the guys and be like, "Oh, you won't be able to keep up with us." And I'm like, "Oh, really? Watch me." And so I think I always really, I knew what it was like to get gritty and persevere through some tough times. And so I thought, well, it's going to be a challenge. Now, I didn't know really how hard that was going to be. And maybe if they would have known how many surgeries I had to have to save my leg, if they would have said, well, it's going to be 34 surgeries to save your leg, I might have gone, why don't you just go ahead and take it? It would have been easier. And for a while, I got caught up in woulda, coulda, shoulda. Maybe I wouldn't have been diagnosed with a nerve disease had it just been amputated in the very beginning. And I could drive myself crazy doing that. I had to really go, okay, well, this is what it is. And yes, it took 34 surgeries. I had my last surgery at the beginning of COVID, and I don't even count that surgery because that would have been surgery number 5 or 35, but they didn't put me under for that one. So I'm like, that one doesn't really count. That was a minor one, it may have been different, but everything that I've been through, I feel like even the tough times and the challenges that I went through as a kid, as an early adult, they prepared me to get through some of the toughest times that I faced with saving my leg and living with a nerve disease. And I think that, often we don't realize why we're going through some hard time, and we can easily get caught up in why me? But I thought, well, why not me? Why not me? Why, who am I? I could maybe get through this and heal, and show others that they can heal too, and that they can get through tough times. And so that has really been what I've been inspired and so passionate to do. My big why, some days where you don't feel motivated or you don't, you're doubting yourself or anything. I always focus back on my why. What is my why? And then I'm all fired up and passionate again to get out there and serve.
I think that's beautiful. It's incredible. That is it is a place where we all want to get to. But somewhere along the way, you have to make the transition from, why the fuck did this happen to me? Right? Like, I'm a beautiful woman. I've got beautiful legs. I have a fitness career. Like, this is like, I literally, like, I use my body for work. Like, this is my instrument, and it's all working out. And then in this, like, one split second, everything changes. To go from that to, I can, this is my why, is a journey. Right. So, like, where
It
along the
was a
way,
long journey. It
yeah,
was a
where
long
along the way did
journey.
you find, was it forgiveness? Like, there's forgiveness is one piece of it, but then to see this as a gift is a whole other, I mean, that's like, that's a whole other thing. Talk to us about how
Well,
you get from one place to the other.
well, I'm glad you brought that up because sometimes when you're, reading someone's bio or you're hearing them share their story, it sounds all nice and shiny and miraculous. And it is a miracle that I have my leg and that I'm able to walk, because actually when I was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome, they told me I would be wheelchair bound forever, that I would be permanently disabled, to, just basically go, give up, girl. You're never going to work again. Go get back in your wheelchair and put your leg up. This is your life sentence. And it wasn't, I think I was in denial a lot in the beginning, a big denial. Like, I remember not realizing how bad my leg would look, how deformed it would be, how it wouldn't work properly, how much pain that it would give me. Because, in the hospital, yeah, it looked like a science experiment, and there were steel rods going through it, and it was completely sliced open, and you could see the inside of my leg. And I remember there were moments of, oh, wow, that is really cool. You can see the striations in the muscle. And then there were moments of, is that really my leg? And
Mm.
then is today the day that they're going to cut it off, or am I going to get to keep it? But I don't think it really hit me how terrible things were until I went and was diagnosed with that nerve disease. And I remember I was home, and one of my friends that I worked with, who was a trainer, she came to see me, and I had my hospital bed downstairs because I couldn't walk up and down the stairs. I mean, I was bedridden. I mean, bedridden, not even able to stand up for
Mm.
almost 4 months, and went from being an athlete to losing 20 pounds of muscle and having bed sores and having to ask somebody to carry a bedpan for me. So it was a very humbling experience. And I was sitting in my hospital bed, and my friend said, well, you can't be a trainer now. What are you going to do? And I burst into tears. And I was like, what do you mean I can't be a trainer? I mean, I'm recovering. And then, of course, I'll get back to training. And it started to reality started to kind of check in, like, uh-oh, maybe I got to do something else. Like, what will I do? And but I still was like, I'm going to keep trying. Well, it took me a year and a half before I could get back to work, because I would recover, go in for another surgery, come back home, recover, go in for another surgery. So it was like sometimes it was a surgery, then a recovery day, then surgery. And then other times I would have 2 weeks to recover. And then, because they were having to piece my leg back together piece by piece. And I think when that moment of transition was when I tried going back to work, and I had no confidence. I mean, I'd lost my whole career. I hadn't worked in a year and a half. I had $2.2 million worth of expensive medical bills. I was losing hope, but I was like, well, we'll see if anybody wants to train with me. Well, to my surprise, my fitness business boomed. Like, my schedule filled up like overnight. Like, everybody was like, yes, I want to train with you. Yes, I want to train. Even though I was on crutches. And it's because they had seen me at the gym in a wheelchair, like 2 weeks after I got home from the hospital. Like, I looked so scary, but I was there. I was showing up. They saw me barely walking. They saw me on crutches, back in a wheelchair. So they saw me no matter what. With my determination and my perseverance, I was there to get strong, working out in my wheelchair, whatever it took. I wanted so bad. I wanted my life back. I wanted to get stronger. I wanted to work again. I wanted to serve. And my business boomed. And I thought, okay, well, life is good. Well, that did not serve me, because I was in so much pain. And it took, though, one day I was at the gym, and I'd had a surgery like the week before, and my husband comes over to me. He worked out at the same gym where I worked, and he come over and he said, Amberly, get off your leg now, go home. And I was like, what are you trying to tell? And he said, you're bleeding out across the gym floor. Look. And
Oh my goodness.
so my leg, the wound had come open, and I'm bleeding. I was so busy trying to take care of other people, I was neglecting myself,
Mm-hmm.
stuffing down the pain. And I thought, I can't keep doing this. This isn't serving me. It's not serving my family. This is no way to live, trying to show up and put on a good face of, I'm strong, I got this, I can do it. And then going home, and I couldn't even get off the couch. I was in so much pain. So one of the hardest things I had to do was tell my clients that in tears, I'm not going to be able to train you. See, I get emotional just thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what it took to, man, take me down a dark path. And it was that dark path where I was like, okay, I'm starting to drink every day. I was isolating. I went from having a big life to not being the mom that I wanted to be. I'm sorry, I'm just going back to that moment. um, but that was the moment that changed my life because I was able to ask for help. And that was hard to ask for help. But asking for help saved my life. And it built a community around me. And you know, I had this one lady, she goes, "Well, you're really lucky. You're lucky you had a community." And I'm like, "Girl, your hard work puts you where your blessings can find you. And to build a community, it's about serving and being there for others. And then when you need help, they show up."
I just want to repeat what you just said. Your hard work puts you where your blessings can find you. That is so profound, and it is so true. You know, I have people all the time who are like, "Oh, it's so great that you bought yourself a, you know, a new car. You're going on this fancy
Yeah,
vacation. You're doing that. And the other. You deserve it." And I'm always like, "Fuck you! I don't deserve it. I demanded it, and then I worked my ass off for it." Right?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm super privileged, but the harder I work, the luckier I seem to get. Right? Like they like what is that
That
thing
is
like
the
luck looks an
truth.
awful lot like hard work. Your your hard work puts you where your blessings can find you. I love that.
Well, it's true, you know, where sometimes it looks easy. And I think a lot of times people, especially with social media, like it looks so easy. Like all of a sudden, oh, you're a best-selling author, or oh wow, must be nice. You got a TED talk or whatever it may be. But they don't see all the effort. But I try to share a little bit of, you know, the behind the scenes of that. Yeah, it's not always easy. And you know, the motorcycle accident and the 34 surgeries, that was hard. I mean, that took a lot of grit to get through that, a lot of faith, a lot of love from my community. I couldn't have done it alone. But the hard part, I think, when reality really set in was when I gave up my training, and I felt like I had no purpose. And I started thinking, well, you know what? My kids could find another mom. My husband deserves a better wife. I was really going down the whole suicidal thought, you know. And that's when I said that when I asked for help, it saved my life. I knew, I was like, I'm going to die in this bed if I don't do something. And so I think it's so important to find purpose, to be of service, and to reach out. And man, when you're going through a hard time, reaching out can be, that was one of the hardest things that I did. The most courageous things that I did was to ask for help. I was so used to helping everybody else, being the
That's your theme
fixer,
here. Yeah.
you know, always being the one in the family to make things better and fix things. And it was like, no, I need help. I'm drowning here. And I couldn't live that double life anymore of trying to pretend like I was okay when really inside I was dying. And so I thought, I want more out of life. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to get better so I can show up and be the mom that my children deserve. I want to show them what resilience looks like, not what being a victim looks like. And so that process is really starts with accepting where you are on your journey. Like I had to take a good hard look at where I was, and like, okay, fitness training clients, you know, that's not serving me. I got to do something else. I had to look at, I have a nerve disease. I was trying to ignore it. And it would be like a diabetic who was trying to ignore that they had diabetes and just not take insulin. I was not taking my medicine. And I remember going into the doctor, I'd stopped taking my medicine. And the doctor said, said, "Oh, and by the way, I just want to let you know stopped taking all my medication. I was on 73 homeopathic pills a day and 11 different prescription medications for complex regional pain syndrome. I stopped taking everything cold turkey." And he put his pad down and he looked at me and he goes, "Do you know how lucky you are? Because you could have had a seizure." He said, "The medication you're on, Lyrica, for the CRPS is an anti-seizure medication. You can't just stop taking that cold turkey because you could go into seizures." And so I'm like, okay, I won't do that again. I'll do what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I believe you really need to be your own advocate for your health, but you also need to like talk to your doctors before you do anything stupid like I did. Um, and so I just really had to take a good hard look at where I was. And then every day it took a lot. Like I wasn't on social media at that time. I was really doing a lot of self-development work, a lot of journaling, a lot of counseling, a lot of spiritual work, a lot of connecting with, my soul sisters to get me through those times. And I think a lot of times people just expect that they go through a hard time and let me just post it all on social media. It wasn't like that for me. Like
Mhm.
I feel like I went into a cave to heal. And then I was like, okay, I'm ready to come out and share what I've learned through this experience.
Do you get compliments all the time for being vulnerable and how brave you must be? I get that a lot, and I'm always like, I can be vulnerable because I'm on the other side of stuff. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, it's still hard for me sometimes though when I cry. I mean, I like that I cry because growing up I was sexually and mentally abused by my stepfather, who was
Mhm.
just really just he actually passed away not long ago, but and he used to really come down on me and like try to break me down until I would cry. And then he would laugh at me and say, "I gotcha. I knew I could make you cry." And so for years, I didn't cry. And then after my accident, something shifted in me where I could embrace the pain, embrace those vulnerable parts, and learn to be vulnerable, and learn that it's okay to cry. That like that's healthy. We need to do that. That's part of processing our pain, and it's okay to feel those feelings and move on. But I have to say, it's still like that first response when I cry is like, "Oh my gosh, I'm crying," and I want to beat myself up, and I have to switch that to it's okay. Like, I feel like we have to give ourselves a lot of grace, especially during times like this where, we're in COVID and so much has changed and we're all just trying to figure it out and do the best that we can. And, this morning I told my daughter last night, I was like, "You're going to have to wake yourself up tomorrow morning. I'm going to be doing an interview. So don't you got to wake up. I'm not going to run out in the middle of the interview and go wake you up for school." And then homeschooling, it's easy to get sucked into, doing work from home. And then I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm the lunch lady. I got to go make lunch." It's figuring out the virtual everything. And so it's a lot. So I think we have to give ourselves a lot of grace right now.
Well, I think those are really your two themes, right? There's this grit of getting through, of figuring out who you are and what you're made of, and giving yourself the grace to do it so well. And I think people can look at you and look at your beautiful face and your beautiful figure and
Mhm.
how everything looks so shiny and pretty, and goes, "Oh, grace must just be like getting through it, looking fantastic." When really grace is that forgiveness that we give ourselves. And I want to go back to something that you said earlier that sort of touches on that theme that I pointed out to you about, how you've always been the person who worries so much about other people. I think that the asking for help is something that so many of us, and I think a lot of strong women who are listening, probably are like, yep.
Mhm.
It's really hard to ask for help, but you and I are both people who love to help other people. Like one of my love languages is acts of service, right? Like I show up for other people. And
You really do. You just really show up for other people. And I love that about you. In fact, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was what really attracted me to you. I listened to an interview that you did with Heather Monahan, and I was like, who is this amazing lady? I want to know her. I want to be her friend. And that's when I reached out to you because of all that you do and your beautiful giving heart.
well, I appreciate that. And when you reached out to me, I was like, oh my God, wow. I'm so excited because I've been following you for a while. So this is our little mutual love admiration society here. And I was so excited when I got you. I think you reached out to me maybe through Instagram, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
ah, squee. But here's what I learned about asking for help. And I've really only learned this just recently is that I get so much joy out of helping someone else. But when I wasn't asking for help, I was actually robbing other people from having that great feeling too. Like people
Mhm.
love to help. I love to help. So why was I not letting other people help me? And it made the asking for help, if you're somebody who likes to serve others, if what you're thinking is, well, I can ask for help and then they'll feel good, it kind of made me feel better about asking for help. So,
Yeah.
being in that place where you're used to being physically strong, mentally strong, emotionally strong, to like admitting that you're in this place. I mean, you didn't say it, but I know that this nerve disease, this chronic pain is actually dubbed the suicide disease because
Mhm.
it does drive people to this dark place. So being able to be in that place where you're surrounded by people who just expect you to be strong and letting them see you at your weakest is really that's a real moment.
Yeah, it was tough, I think, too, because as a kid, I learned to be self-reliant. I mean, there were 7 kids, and my mom was busy. She worked sometimes, 4 jobs at one time just to keep a roof over our head and table and food on the table. And um, I learned I had to do because when I had asked for help for some things in the past from my dad, like when I'd asked for help, the answer was always no. So I was like, okay, I figured at a young age, if I want something, if I want to get something done, I'm just going to have to do it myself. But what I realized and what this accident and the recovery process has taught me is that, yeah, we can do a lot on our own. We are strong on our own. But when we come together as a community, we are unstoppable. We can, and that's what I learned. It's not just even asking for help, but when you do, you build that bond and that connection even more. I mean, just for example, when I first met my husband, one of the things he said was, he was like, "You don't let me help you." He's like he didn't feel needed, and I realized that he wanted to feel needed. And one day, he was spending the night. He was over at my house when we first started dating, and I was down. He woke up in the middle of the night, and I was downstairs fixing the air conditioner, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I had my toolbox out and fixing it." He goes, "Wait, you don't need that. You have me now. You don't need that toolbox anymore." And so it was like these little things that I was learning, like I can ask for help. I finally have a man in my life, first time ever that I've had a man in my life that I can depend on, and I can ask for help. And sometimes it's still hard for me to ask for help because it's an ego thing.
Yes.
And I have to get over my ego and be like, you know what? No, I really need help. I can't do it all. I need help. And so it has actually made my relationship with my husband. Um, I think when you go through something hard, it will tear you apart or it can bring you closer together. And we have a bond that is so strong because of what we have been through. I don't feel like this is my story. I feel like this is our story because he's been there with me every step of the way. I mean, every single surgery, he was at the hospital with me. And so, that is a good example of, our relationship is stronger now because I've been able to let my guard down and, ask for help. And it in the, even for, if we're both doing speaking events like you and I are doing, or master classes or webinars or courses, when we can come together and share what works better, we're not only helping each other, we're helping our clients because we're building something better for them so we can be of better service when we come together. So I always think, when you find those good girlfriends that they're supporting you, that you feel comfortable, that you can ask for help, that's golden. That's priceless. And I think that I wish we could all do that more. I think it'd be a better place if we could all just help each other more and learn to ask for help, and there not be so much judgment on that. But I think I valued my worth a little bit too much in, well, if I ask for help, then maybe I'm not as worthy, or I don't know. But it's a learning process, and it does take courage to go, okay, but I think I wanted to get better and wanted a better life more than I wanted to feel stuck. And so
Yeah.
that outweighed it.
Yeah, it's funny that you talk about the toolbox. I'm about the biggest feminist you're ever gonna find, and yet I have a deal with my husband that everything dead, dirty, and outside is his job, and everything else I'll handle. It's sort of our breakdown of duties in the house. Dead, dirty, and outside, he handles. And, but every once in a while, I definitely am like, "Well, I can just change the car battery. Why do I need his help doing it?" And, sometimes you gotta let him feel wanted too,
Yeah.
right? They gotta feel needed.
Yeah.
So, but I like, this abundance mentality that you have, I think is really, if you look at people who are successful, they have abundance mentality. When I was putting my book out, I had written to so many people to get blurbs from my book, and uh, all of the A-listers that I reached out to said yes immediately. And all the B-listers that I sent it out to, not only did they not say no immediately, I had to chase them down to finally get the no from them. And I called a friend of mine and he was like, "Yeah, why do you think they're A-listers?" Right? Because they have abundance mentality. They give, they show up for other people. So, I think it's a winning way to be. But so here you are, you've had this accident, you've gone through the surgeries, you're in a great relationship, you're healthy, you're mentally, emotionally in a great place, and you've got this amazing speaking career, you're doing all this media. Does it ever get to be too much, too overwhelming? Do you ever feel like the burden of what's being placed on your shoulders to represent people who are in this place? Does it ever feel like it's more than you can handle? Or conversely, do you feel like you're not living into it enough, that like there's so much more you could do, but you just don't have the time to, or the means,
All
or
of the
the knowledge?
above. All of the above. I'm
Mm,
telling you, like, I had no idea when I started to just share my experience, that people would go, "Oh, me too," and they would
mm,
connect. And when I wrote my book, I wrote it, and I thought, if I can just touch one person's life,
mm.
it will give my pain purpose. And I just want to help somebody out of that dark time that they're in, because I've been there and I know what it's like to have to crawl out of that. And I had no idea that, I'd be sitting with Megyn Kelly on the Today Show.
Mhm.
And then the next day, emails coming and, messages on social media after they had seen it. And then one thing led to another and people were starting to listen. And I was like, oh, wow. It is a lot and overwhelming sometimes. And actually last night, my daughter decorated her room for Halloween and everything. And so we were in her room and she was showing me all her decorations and everything. And I realized as it was the first moment I had to kind of sit and be in that moment for the day. And I felt my mind kept racing of, oh, I have to do this. Oh, I have to do this. Like, I got to do this. Oh, I didn't check that email. I didn't get back. Like, my mind was just going. And I felt like my nervous system just I was overwhelmed. And I thought to myself, I really need to meditate. And she said, well, mommy, let's go outside and look and see what the lights in my room look like from the outside of the house. And I was kind of quiet because I was so much in my head. And we walked outside and she goes, mommy, maybe we could go to my room and we could meditate. And I was like, oh, she's she's a little angel. It's like she can read my mind.
Yes.
And that's what I needed to do. I think that it can be overwhelming, but then we have to remember that we are in charge of how much we put on our plate. And I tend to put a lot on my plate. And then a lot of times I have to remind myself, well, it's full because I've put everything on there. And we teach people how fast, oh, Amberly gets back to you right away. So, we teach people that by responding to them very fast, whether it's comments or direct messages or email or whatever it may be, but we have to take care of our mental health and our physical health. And so last night I was able to kind of let the day go and be in the moment with my daughter. And the meditation turned into listening to the kind of music that she likes. But it was wonderful just to have that moment with her. And I thought, I just recently started doing this 30-day challenge that I started to get people to move their body for 30 minutes a day for 30 days. And the reason I did that is because I knew that what fitness does for me. I knew that it moves your mind. I do it yes, if you can look better, that's awesome. But I do it really because of what it does for me mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And it builds your confidence. It's my medicine. And so I thought I was starting to let things slip. I was skipping my workouts.
Mm-hmm.
One day it popped up on my screen that I had 12 hours of screen time that day. And that's not sitting there like scrolling through social media. It's a little bit of that. It was like interviews, webinars, speaking, clients. And I thought, I need to make sure I'm moving my body. So I did this challenge. And this morning I knew I was going to be talking with you. So I set my alarm for 4:30 so I could get up and work out before we talked. And I think we have to do what's important to us. We have to make sure that we're taking care of our health, because what I've learned through all of this is if you don't take care of your health, you can't enjoy anything else. Nothing else matters if you're not taking care of your health. And so, yes, it does feel overwhelming sometimes. And I have to take a step back and make sure I'm really grounded into what my purpose is, what my truth is, because it can get, you can get distracted, you can get derailed. And so if you have, like for me, I have a morning routine. If I stick to that morning routine and I get to start my day each day grounded, then I can get through the day, and whatever comes if I do get derailed, I can get back on pretty quick. But if I don't have that, then life gets overwhelming. Do you have a morning routine as well?
Oh, no.
No.
I've had lots of morning routines, and then something happens and something gets in the way, and then I fall off, the proverbial wagon. And I think what I don't give myself is the grace to say, well, I did great on Monday. I did great on Tuesday. I did great on Wednesday. I fell off the wagon on Thursday. I guess I'm done. I don't have the grace to just say, I'll just start again on Friday. And that's the thing. That's always hard, to keep coming back and just be like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like I need to lower the bar, like to the point where I can slither under it. I think that's a problem with high achieving individuals, is that we think it has to be like, if you're going to work out, it has to be like an hour of like really hard cardio, like running. And it's like, it could be 30 minutes of movement. Like maybe that 30 minutes of movement is stretching. It could be anything. And I think it's hard for me to not be all or none. So I think
Uh-huh.
my morning routine ritual kind of falls apart sometimes because I let other people dictate what's important. What's important to me is writing the next book and doing the research, doing these interviews so I can do the research for it. And then sometimes somebody decides that they want to have a meeting with me and they offer me 8 a.m. Well, I can't do 8 a.m. because I'm prepping for this interview, but I say yes anyway. And then I'm super stressed and then I don't work out in the morning. And
Yeah.
what I need to do is just say, sorry, I can't do that. Here are sometimes I could do it the next week and just take back control of that conversation.
It's
And I don't
taken a
do that.
long time. It's taken a long time for me to get there. I had to really see well, I got there after last year. I was in the ER like 6 times, I think, because I was traveling so much. I was living out of a suitcase, going from different stages, and I mean, I love it because I love the people.
Mm,
I love going to the conferences because I love the people, but my health was deteriorating
yes.
and I was getting infections and ended up in the ER. The last time I was there, the doctor pulled me aside and she said, "This is the last time you're coming to the ER. Okay. You've
You
got to
going to
go
the
to a
morgue next
regular
time?
doctor. You're going to start taking care of yourself." And I was like, wow, like it was like she shook me by the shoulders and woke me up. And I was like, yeah, all this is great. And all of these getting to be on stages. Cause I never who would have thought I would be asked to do a TED talk? And, and by the way, I heard on one of the interviews that you did, I think it was with Heather, you said something about, I don't even want to watch my TED talk or something like that. I
Can't watch
feel
it.
the same way about mine because I'm just like, it was one of my first big talks and I didn't know
I
what I
am
was
a TED
doing.
talker. That was my TED talk.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But all that's exciting stuff and it's
Yeah.
big stuff. But I tell you one thing I don't do, and I want to, is when I wake up in the morning, I do not open my phone up until I've had my morning routine. And because if I do, that's like having one Dorito. You can't just have one Dorito. It's like you can't just check one email. But I got to check that one. Oh, I got to respond to that. So I write down, and you know what helps with that is I have an accountability partner. So she's one of my best friends. And every morning we take a screenshot of something that we've read, either in a self-development book or a spiritual book. And we write 3 things that we're grateful for, and we send that to each other. That helps me. I think accountability is key. If you've got
Huge.
somebody that you're like, okay, I did my morning routine. Did you? Oh, you're slacking. You better get on it. And I think that if I can just and it doesn't take a long time, and you're right. When you're an overachiever, I was the same way, like overachiever. In high school, I was actually won every category for Miss GHS, class favorite, most spirit, all that stuff. And the teacher called my mom and said, Amberly's going to have to pick 2. She can only get 2. And it was like overachiever,
Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons like this 30-day challenge that I'm doing is helped because 30 minutes of moving, and some people, to them 30 minutes of moving is just cleaning the kitchen because they've got CRPS and they haven't moved in 2 years. So
Mm.
cleaning the kitchen is a big deal. So everything is perspective, right? So it's really taking a look at what you can do instead of what you can't do.
So your book, True Grit and Grace, is incredible. Your podcast, the Amber Lago, True Grit and Grace, is incredible. But I know you also have a course. So before we close out, tell folks about your course.
Yeah, I have a mastermind and a course, and the course is called Your Resilient Life. And it really takes you through the mind, body, and spirit transformation. And then the end of the course is about a resilient life. And I talk about the 5-step process. It's called PACER. It stands for perspective, acceptance, community, endurance, and rest. And we go through those things in order to really strengthen your resilience so you can get through challenges, whether it is chronic pain, pain's pain, whether, we have heartache, we lost our job, whatever struggle you're going through, it really gives you these, principles and tips and tools to get you from point A to point B. I also share a lot of the mistakes that I made along the process so others don't have to make those mistakes. And thank you for being on my podcast. I actually that was one of my favorite interviews because I love your book so much. One of my favorite books. And so thank you for being on the podcast. That's my favorite part, is getting to talk to amazing thought leaders. And so thank you.
Well, I think it's so much fun. I mean, everyone's like, why are you? You're doing this podcast twice a week. You're doing live
Okay,
twice a
that's
week. And
amazing, by the way, because I was going to do that and I was doing it twice a week. And I'm like, whoa, it's a lot to keep up with.
it's a lot to
So
keep up
I'm
with.
blown away that you do it
Yeah.
on twice a week.
It's a lot, and it means I'm reading like 2 books a week because I'm having people come on the show and I wanna read their books. But also what a gift it is that I get to spend an hour just playing in your mind and just, like, learning all about you and hearing about your stories, and so, I it's such a gift to me. So I really appreciate you, and I appreciate all you do. Tell people where they can find you if they're looking for you online. There are people who are watching this, obviously are seeing the scroll below, but people who are now listening to it on a podcast, we want to make sure that they can find you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, awesome. AmberlyLago.com. You can find me. You can see some of the behind the scenes crazy stuff I do at Amberly Lago Motivation on Instagram. And then you can also text me. I'm really big on reaching out and community. So text me at 818-214-7378. And if you text that number, text the word grit, you can get your downloadable Goals, Grit, and Grace playbook to help keep you motivated and really focused on your goals and to get to your goals faster. Because I believe, it's one thing when you hear an interview or something, but to have a little bit of, something that you can see and actually take part in to keep you motivated and on track. So yeah, reach out. I love to hear from people.
Well, that's fantastic. We'll put all of that in the show notes. Amberly, thank you so much. This has been a great
Thank
way for me. This is
you.
a great way for me to start my morning. So thank you.
Oh, best way to start my day. Thank you so much.